There's something that's been on my mind for quite some time now that I need to talk about, and that is I am seeing increasing levels, especially among young people and especially among women, of detachment from reality. Now, what do I mean by that? Growing up, there were certain things that were taken for granted by people, and if you read books going back hundreds, even thousands of years, there's collected like sayings of wisdom, you could say. In the Jewish tradition, this would be something like Pirkei Avot, but it exists in literally every ancient culture, every culture that goes back more than a few hundred years. You will find these expressions of wisdom, and they all kind of like triangulate onto the same sort of ideas. There's lots of these around the world. You can find them online. You can listen. There's entire YouTube channels actually dedicated to sayings of wisdom you could listen to all day, every day for weeks and weeks and weeks upon end. And what you will find across cultures is there are several sayings almost identical to each other or getting at the same point. And these are the kind of things growing up that were inculcated into me as a person who was paying attention, who was doing pretty well in school, who was studying things on the side, who was reading books on the side, who was watching, television and movies and taking in a lot of culture in the late 80s and early 90s. The early 80s I was around for, but I was a little kid, so I wouldn't be taking much in then. I was born in 81. So before the big change that happened, I would say, which I would attribute to the smartphone, there were certain things that were just known. They were known across space and time on this planet, across cultures. There were certain things that were taken for granted. And what I'm finding now is, because I believe of internet algorithms, all of these things are being erased and forgotten. And the cutoff age right now is right around 40 years of age. Anyone younger than 40 years of age knows diminishingly less of these things that are just like common knowledge throughout human culture, throughout time. And anyone above 40 knows these things. Deep in their bones, we know these things. But I'm 45. Now, I find this disturbing. I started to discover this about 5 or 6 years ago when I was working with a bunch of young people, and there was this one particular gay guy who I was scheduled with a lot, a Gen Z guy, early Gen Z, meaning he's near the cusp of millennial, and I would quiz him. And I would ask him all kinds of things. And what I started to discover was, apart from gay sex, this guy didn't know anything about anything at all. And then I got to be a substitute teacher for a few years, paid really well in Hawaii. And I started quizzing the Gen Z high school students on things which had taken place inside their own lifespan, which is to say, Imagine Dragons, for example, who was a popular band from like a few years ago, right? When I was their age, when I was like a 15, 16-year-old, I would have known about popular bands from a few years prior. That would have been on my radar for sure. Like, let's say New Kids on the Block, for example. I didn't listen to New Kids on the Block, but I had an awareness of them. These kids had no awareness of things from just a few years prior. They had no awareness of things that were popular when they were like pre-teenagers, for example. I found this disturbing. I found increasingly, and this is very much the case now, that you will find Gen Z is unaware of anything that is not on their feed recently, on their TikTok feed, on their YouTube feed, on their Instagram feed. Those are the big three, I believe, from what I can tell. If it hasn't been present in the last year and a half, they don't know about it. They don't remember, or they don't know. And that's pop culture. That's not even ancient wisdom things that people know. So what I'm saying is that I'm discovering through interaction that people under the age of 40 know almost nothing of the collective wisdom of humanity, which everyone above 40 and previously for thousands of years knew as common knowledge. And this is incredibly disturbing because we are hurtling headlong toward a reset situation, a collapse of civilization. We are beyond the point of no return on that. It's going to happen. The question is not whether or not it's going to happen. The question is, when will it happen? And I think it's going to happen pretty soon now. And if people don't know these basic human wisdoms, when we go back to hunter-gatherer tribe situations, which is where this is heading because it's that bad, you would simply see much larger groups of people dying off. And I believe this is someone's plan. Than if you had undergone one of these resets at a time when the majority of people knew the ancient wisdoms. And I'm not even talking, by the way, about knowledge of herbology, birds, trees, animals, that sort of thing. That would be rather more specialized ancient wisdoms. I'm talking about basic ancient wisdoms that, like I said, everyone over the age of 40 knew pretty much. It was just collective knowledge. It was just something that humans knew. It just got passed down from generation to generation. Really basic stuff young people don't know anymore. And the other thing, and this is how I started out this video, is as a result of that, there is a basic detachment from reality taking place. Let me give you a concrete example. Almost any woman under the age of 40 has a very firm belief in her mind that she doesn't need a man to survive. And that is in fact true at the moment because government has subsidized it such that most men in the Western sphere of the Earth hemisphere are basically enslaved to the system, and the women are profiting off of that. Their lives are very easy. They basically live like princesses compared to most of human history. And they have no sense of adversity. They have no sense of difficulty. What they consider to be traumatic or difficult is laughable, historically speaking. Absolutely laughable. So their sense of reality is completely distorted. So this is very true of women, and this is very true of young people. So young women, their sense of reality is so incredibly distorted, especially in America at this time, that anything mildly challenging throws them into such disarray that they may very well kill themselves over it. That's how bad it's gotten. I'm not exaggerating at all. It's absolutely absurd. We have a situation where the character deficit of the average person in America now is completely beyond the pale. Completely beyond the pale. Minor things that would challenge you for survival throughout most of human history that people would just accept as a part of life, nowadays would be such a challenge for most young people, they would fucking kill themselves rather than deal with it. I'm talking like churning butter. I'm not talking about something very difficult. I'm talking about building a basic fucking shelter for yourself in a rainstorm, or to prepare for a rainstorm coming. These people are not ready. It has nothing to do with their genetic background. It has nothing to do with what race they belong to. It has to do with when they happen to incarnate on this planet and where they happen to incarnate on this planet. We have produced almost 2 entire generations now of absolute babies. From a historical perspective, these people are at the level of a toddler in terms of their knowledge of how to survive on this planet. Everything that they take for granted is about to be destroyed because of their own ineptitude, for the most part, and what they are allowing to happen politically. Nobody sees it coming, for the most part. On average, people don't see it coming. The high anxiety levels are because 2 things. It's all the caffeine being ingested, for one. And the other thing is, that's just the drug of our age. The other thing is, humanity collectively is anticipating the event I'm speaking of, the utter collapse, which has been engineered, like I said, from the top. The utter collapse of civilization is coming. People sense this because there is a collective awareness of the future. There always has been. This has been proven. So people know this is coming, but they don't really understand what it is that they're sensing. So this manifests as a high level of society, a high level of anxiety throughout society. And all the coffee consumption isn't helping with that. So this is where we are. People don't know basic things about culture, let alone things about survival. If you're rebooted back to a situation where there's no such thing as electricity, there's no such thing as running water, there's no such thing as transportation. If suddenly 5 miles away is a far distance because you don't have a car or a train or a bus anymore. His thinking about this. The only people I can tell you en masse who are thinking about this are gamers. Like I said, collectively we anticipate the future, and you can see this in culture. Culture doesn't really exist in movies and television anymore. That's sort of faded out. It exists in gamers, in gaming. And what you'll find is the trend, and has been for quite some time in gaming, is survival crafting games, base building games. So this tells me humanity is collectively anticipating a time where we revert back to tribalism. Very, very low level government. Large governments are about to collapse, clearly. So there is a certain degree of anticipation on behalf of the youth. See, we play things, when we play in our youth, whether we're animals or humans, that is us anticipating what we will confront in adulthood. So there is a certain degree of subconscious anticipation of this collapse event, but it would help tremendously if these people had basic knowledge of wisdom, let alone knowledge of things like herbology, woodworking, what have you. They don't have any of that, but they are playing video games where there's a simulation, there's a simulacrum of that going on. That will help a little bit. That will help in their thinking, but these people are going to have to reinvent the wheel when this happens. So it's a very sad situation. It's also a very sad situation that because of the imbalances created by the money printer, those of us who actually have knowledge of this sort of thing are not in any way valued at this time by society. After the event takes place, of course, we will be warlords and kings, because we will be the only people capable of showing others how to survive in a world without electricity, without air conditioning, without transportation, without running water. We're the only people that are going to know how to gain meat, harvest meat, acquire vegetables, acquire water, acquire that which would function now as antibiotics to keep you alive, to create shelter, to figure out how to maintain old shelter in the new paradigm. We are the only people capable of that. Once the civilization collapse takes place, that makes people like us with knowledge like ours and skills like ours the new kings. And it's hilarious. People right now who have absolutely no skills whatsoever except one, grift, are the ones that are the kings. We are living in a griftocracy, and I'm not the first person to say this. And the griftocracy eventually destroys itself, which is what evil does. Evil always eventually destroys itself. If you pay attention in media, in culture, you'll see that theme over and over again, that evil eventually destroys itself. It's impossible for art on the whole, on average, over time, to not convey truthful ideas, because what happens is when you have art that's conveying falsehood, it gets automatically rejected by the collective, which is why the woke thing didn't last for very long, because they were pushing ideas that people knew in their DNA were simply not true. So over time, if you consume enough art, there's certain themes you'll take in that are true that you'll learn from. And this was the original function of art. It just kind of went off the rails in the last 30 years or so. But one of those themes is that evil destroys itself. So the griftocracy it's a little bit like you remember the cartoon and the guy who's sawing off the wooden plank he's standing on until he's done sawing it, and then he falls to his doom. It's a little bit like that kind of a situation, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious to watch. It's hilarious to watch these situations like what's going down in the Middle East. The United States literally making decisions to destroy itself over its own hubris, its inability to realize how complacent and inept it has become over time by not, by for one thing, embracing what are those things called? Luxury beliefs. These luxury beliefs, which are simply falsehoods, but in the upper echelon society, you look cool by embracing, have trickled down so far now that they've led to a situation where we are, on the whole, an inept group of people with no skills, no realistic survival skills, no basic skills whatsoever. Instead, we filled our minds with completely useless information. And so this is where we find ourselves. This is the theme of the video. We are in a situation where most people in society have skills that are either only useful in the very precarious situation we find ourselves in right now, or they have no useful skills whatsoever. And most of the skills that people have or do not have in a situation where electricity goes bye-bye, which is written in, it's in the script, it's coming, are not going to be very helpful. So if you happen to survive the collapse, at that point, you better hope and pray that you have the kind of mind that's capable of picking up skills rapidly, and that you find someone who can distribute skills to you, or you figure them out on your own rapidly. And figuring them out on your own is a question of your IQ, and most people don't have a very high IQ, so then you're automatically gone right there. Most people aren't going to be able to handle this information. It'll make their brain explode to really compute what I'm saying right now. And I've seen this coming since the 90s. I saw we started down this path in the mid 90s. I started to recognize it. And now here we are. And my intuition's telling me it'll be any minute now. It'll be any minute now. What would I suggest you do? Get books. Get books on survivalism. Get books on crafting, on woodworking. Get books on low-tech skills, survival skills, as quickly as you can. And then get anything you can afford. This is what I have done that would be useful in a survival situation. Or just think about what you would need to survive without electricity. That's the most important thing. Because most people now are completely clueless.